we often think of building a business. You're gonna burn yourself out. We want to try to make as many good decisions in a single day without even thinking about it. Hello and welcome back to another video here with Kyle. We're going to be talking about personal finance, and I think this is episode number 10 of the series, which is exciting. We're now in the double digits, and here are the three things we're going to be talking about today. So the first one we're going to be talking about is building wealth. The next one is going to be talking about intensity to intentionality. And then the last thing we're going to talk about before we wrap this up will be building habits, because this is the beginning of a new year, 2026, and of course a lot of people are doing New Year's resolutions and things, so we're going to talk about habit forming today. So let's go ahead and start with our first topic, which is going to be about building wealth. And the main thing I want to talk about is slow and steady. That's really the focus of this whole segment here. So the first thing we want to talk about is what in the world even is wealth? Because for a lot of people, different thoughts can come up when you say the word wealth. So here's really what wealth is. Wealth is your assets, whatever you own, and all the money in your bank account and all the money in your savings account or wherever else you have. So everything you own and all your money that you have minus the amount of debt that you have. And whatever that answer is at the end of that math equation, that is really how much wealth you have. And so for many people that are talking about building wealth, we often think of building a business, becoming a millionaire or a billionaire, and they start thinking about terms like income and equating that with wealth. Wealth is not going to be your income. It's going to be your assets and things like that. So there are many ways to build wealth. And as I said a second ago, building a business would be one way that you could build wealth. But many of those ways come with risk. And a lot of times the risk is losing everything that you have. Now, there is no risk-free way to build wealth, but there is one way that is a lot more safe and reliable compared to the other ways. So the reason why there's risk involved with, a greater risk involved, I should say, with building a business and things like that is that it requires other elements such as time, talent, a large sum of funds that you can use to pour into that business. And of course, there's a good chance that the business could still fail even with all the time, talent, and funds that you could potentially have. And most people don't have the combination of those three things to even build a business to begin with and then use that business as a way to build wealth. So what we really need to look at is what are ways to build wealth that doesn't necessarily require talent or a large sum of money right from the beginning. And that main way of doing that is investing. So again, this is why I mentioned at the beginning that the theme here is kind of slow and steady when it comes to building wealth. So your 401ks, your IRAs, those different retirement accounts is the primary way that people build wealth in the United States because it is the most reliable and consistent ways to build wealth. What you do is you're putting in a percentage of your income every single paycheck over the span of decades and letting the stock market do its magic, compounding over time and growing into a very large nest egg. And that is the primary source of your wealth. This is why Laura and I have been pushing to get out of debt. It's not just so that it makes our budgeting a lot easier, but getting out of debt allows you to take more money to go into things like your retirement accounts that will then build wealth earlier and faster over time. They say that the earlier you invest, the more power those dollars have. They multiply quicker. That's something that I saw with the money guys, actually. The money guys had went down and did the calculations. They were saying that $1 invested in a retirement account in your 20s has like 10 times its value by the time it gets to retirement compared to $1 that's invested in your 40s. Of course, you should invest all the way through from beginning to end, but that power, it really comes from earlier on. It doesn't have to be a lot of money. It could just be a little bit at a time over a long span of time. And so when we think about investing, there's a couple of traps that you have to watch out for. And that is that some people try to portray these get-rich-quick schemes that can help you build that wealth very quickly without needing to do retirements and those sorts of boring things that aren't going to make you extravagantly wealthy. So, for example, some things that people will market as ways to make money very quickly is investing into gold. And they'll often talk about how the world's going to end and everything. And so then you have this gold that's going to supposedly help you out in those doomsday scenarios. The issue is that gold has not gone up in price as quickly as the stock market has. So it has been proven time and time again that if you're going to invest money and watch it grow over a long period of time and then get that value back when you need it in retirement, that the stock market is so much better than investing in gold. Some other examples is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is extremely volatile. It's got a lot of risk. You could pour a ton of money into a certain coin and then it lose its value overnight because people have decided to not value it anymore. Even the most famous Bitcoin, which is where the name comes from, right? Even the most famous Bitcoin has a very volatile price. It has shot up and down, and really COVID is what has brought its price up to where it has been at today. But there's no real inherent value to the coin on its own. If everybody today decided that the coin no longer had any value, then the coin would have no value. Whereas the stock market is tied to companies. So because Apple makes a lot of money, sells a lot of phones and different products, when we say that the stock in Apple is worth this amount, it's not just because we have made it up in our minds. It's because we can look at the numbers and say, well, Apple is $1 billion company. It has sold this many iPhones. It made this much money. So that's why it is valued at this number, instead of it just being something that comes up out of thin air. So this is why we need to avoid get-rich-quick schemes. Don't fall for those traps, because ultimately they're not going to get you where you want to go, which is trying to build wealth for retirement in the future. So the last thing I want to talk about when it comes to the stock market is that the stock market is accessible to everybody. You don't have to be a billionaire to build wealth on the stock market. All you have to do is put in a little bit of money every single month, and then you can buy shares. And sometimes you can just buy even portions of shares. So it's not like you need thousands upon thousands of dollars to get into the stock market, or that you can't just put in $50 a month or whatever a number that works for your budget. If you have a company match, or your company offers you some sort of 401k, that's another access point to the stock market to help your money grow over time successfully. So it's a very accessible way to build wealth. The thing is, and this is why there's lots of people that don't like to talk about it, and they want to talk about gold and other things, Bitcoin and all these other things, is because the stock market's very boring. The stock market is not exactly super exciting. It's putting in money and waiting decades. It's putting in money for 30 years straight or 40 years straight and then reaping the rewards later on in life. There's no instant gratification. There's no instant success that goes with it. It's extremely boring. It's something that you only check in on maybe quarterly or every half a year. and see how the number is going. And then you just keep moving on and basically not even thinking about it. You just keep putting money into it, not thinking about it, and living your life. It's extremely boring, but it is extremely successful too. The stock market has grown year over year, roughly 10% on average since its inception. Of course, it goes different averages or different growth numbers every single year. Some years it's up 20%. Some years it can retract 5% or 10%, go backwards. But regardless, when you look at the totality of the stock market, it's going up by roughly 10% over every single year. And when you are sitting there waiting decades before you ever pull a dollar out of your retirement account, you don't have to worry about stock market crashes. You don't need to worry about recessions or those types of things because you're not planning to pull your money out anytime soon. You have time on your side. And so all you got to do is just keep grinding away, putting money into it, ignoring the numbers, and just keep moving along because you know over time it's going to bounce back and it's going to keep growing, and it doesn't really matter what the day-to-day volatility looks like because you know that the trend is going to be about 10% growth year over year. So this gets me to my final conclusion here about wealth building the slow and steady, not so exciting way. If you haven't started investing money yet into a 401k or an IRA or something like that, then you should do that today. You know, the saying is the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is to do it right now. So if you haven't started investing into a retirement account, you should do it today. Start putting money in, letting it grow over time. Don't touch it. Ignore it. Don't worry about what the stock market is doing. If it's going up and down, don't pull the money out. Just let it go. Consistently keep putting money into it. And then look at it many decades from now and you'll see the growth that you have put into it. I've only been putting into my retirement accounts probably about 4 years now. And it is already over $20,000. And it's going to continue to grow over time. They say that the slowest part is the beginning part. So I'm not going to be too upset about it. I'm just going to keep putting money into it, letting it grow. And when I look back, it's going to be a much larger number than what it is now. The first $100,000 is usually the longest growth, but once you get past that $100,000 mark, it starts to grow much more rapidly because you are having that compounding growth over time, because that's how percentages work. And then you almost have to not even put money into your retirement account. It's just going to keep growing with or without your money. So that's what we're trying to do here with retirement, is we're just trying to build that snowball, build it, and then at some point it's going to be rolling down the hill and it's going to be unstoppable. It's just going to keep growing, and there's really nothing you can even do to stop it. So if you haven't started, now is the best time to do it, because time is your best ally. Time is your best ally. If you wait till tomorrow or wait till next year, you are missing out on potential growth that you could have, which means that you will have less wealth over time as well. So if you haven't done that, look into it, talk to your employer, or if your employer doesn't offer retirement, maybe create your own. There's Vanguard and other companies out there that you could use that have retirement accounts that you could put money into. So go ahead and look into that. And let's move on to the next segment here. So the next segment is sort of connected to wealth building, the slow and steady way, but it's also connected to debt paying off and the Dave Ramsey steps. And that is going from intensity to intentionality. So in the first couple baby steps of Dave Ramsey's plan, it's extremely intense. You're trying to get a starting emergency fund, $1,000 in a month. And then you're trying to pay off debt using the snowball method as quickly as possible. Then, the people at Dave Ramsey will say you should have it paid off within 18 months to 2 years. So that's not a lot of time, especially with some of the debt amounts that some of us have. But that's where that intensity comes in. We're trying to find margin. We're trying to budget our money. We're, eating beans and rice and beans. We're not going into a restaurant unless we work there. All those different sayings that Dave Ramsey likes to use when he's doing his little Dave Ramsey rants and things. All those things help you get through those first couple baby steps of trying to get money into the savings account and paying off debt. But once you get past that part, then you get into more of an intentional part. Because you see, you don't want to be intense forever. And when you look at the next few steps in the baby steps, they are goals that are much grander in scope. They're not something you're going to get done in a half a year, or 2 years. They're going to be things that take a little bit longer to do. So like, for example, step 3 is to build your emergency fund up to 3 to 6 months of expenses. That's not something you're going to do in the snap of a finger. You're going to want to do it over time, as quickly as you can, but over time. Step 4 is investing, which we just talked about in the previous segment, right? That's something that happens over decades of time, but you're going to be putting about 15% of your income into retirement investments and then letting it grow, and that's decades. The next one is college funds for your kids, and again, that's also decades. If you start a college fund for your kid at their birth, that's 18 years of putting money into that. So that's an 18-year-long goal that you're working on for that. And then the next one after that is paying off your house, which if you have a house, you might have a lot of money in that mortgage, and that's not something you're going to do in 2 years. It's going to be something that's going to take a while to do. So if you go at these goals with intensity, like you did with the first 2 steps, you're going to burn yourself out. You're going to get tired of budgeting. You're going to get tired of living on beans and rice. You're going to get tired of trying to constantly find margin in your budget. You're going to get tired of those things. And then it's going to make you want to quit. And you've gotten over the hard part. You've done the difficult part. Getting out of all that consumer debt. Getting an emergency fund going. You've done the difficult parts. So we need to move from this intensity mindset to an intentionality mindset. So what is being intentional? Intentional just means that you're aware of the good choices and you're making them. You're not hyper-focused on them, but you're making those good choices. So for example, you're still budgeting. You're still trying to save money where you can, but you're not going to be super frugal. You're going to spend money on things that maybe you want to enjoy. Start maybe considering taking some vacations. Start buying new clothes or shopping, giving yourself a little bit more spending room in these different areas while you're still trying to achieve those other goals. And that's the thing. While you're giving yourself more freedom with your budget now, because you're no longer in the intensity mode, you don't want to make that freedom so large to the point where it starts sacrificing your other goals, right? You shouldn't go out shopping so much to the point where you have to cut back on your retirement savings and those sorts of things. When you have completed those debt payments and all that stuff, we have to make a mindset shift. And I've noticed that with Dave Ramsey's calls and stuff, because I watch his videos and things, that there are people that call in that talk about that. They talk about how they are feeling a little burnt out, or they've been feeling very intense, or that they feel guilty going on a vacation and those sorts of things, even though they're debt free. And it's because they're still in that intensity mode. They're still thinking about payments and that they're trying to get out of debt. But they've already done it. They've accomplished that goal. It's time to move on to the next part, which is starting to live in a little bit more freedom, starting to have a little bit more breathing room, enjoying the hard-earned success that you have created for yourself. That's what you have to do. You start loosening up a little bit. Obviously not to the point where your cost of living has now exceeded what you make. You still want to live on less than what you make, obviously, because we don't want to go back into debt. But we don't need to be super intense about it either. And this is something that my wife and I are going to have to start thinking about as well, because our goal is to get out of debt this year in 2026. And when we do that, we need to then shift from this more intensity-focused thinking to a more intentional thinking, where we have sinking funds, saving up for things that we want, but we're also making room in our budget to have a little bit more fun in things. Like room in our budget for going to the zoo or going on more vacations or buying new clothes or going shopping or whatever it is that we want to do, buying more Christmas gifts, those sorts of things. By getting out of debt, you have the freedom to start doing those things. And that's something we're going to have to face when we eventually get out of debt this year, is that we need to then change our mindset from this intensity moment to an intentional moment each and every day. So if you have any thoughts about this intensity versus intentionality mindset, go ahead and let those thoughts be made in the comments down below, and I'll go ahead and try to get back to those comments when I have the chance. I'm interested to hear what you think about this idea of intentionality versus intensity. Let's go ahead and get into the last segment of our episode here. And this last segment is probably the most New Year's resolutionist topic of the whole video, and that is habit forming, building good habits. So they say that building good habits takes about 30 days. So you have to do something consistently for about 30 days before it starts to become second nature and you start to just do it out of habit, obviously. So habits are formed whether we like it or not. We're either creating habits without thinking about it, or we're creating them intentionally. And habits can be good and they can also be bad. Oftentimes, those unintentional habits that we create are bad habits. They're things that we're doing that end up becoming decisions that are made on autopilot that end up being bad decisions. So like, for example, for our health, if we're constantly eating ice cream every single day and we've formed that habit, that is bad for our health in the long term. So that little habit, that little decision every single day ends up being a bad decision that we don't even realize we're making because we're not really thinking about it, because that's really what a habit is. A habit is an action, a choice that you're making without really even thinking about it. So we want to make good habits, because if habits are decisions that we make every single day without thinking about it, then we want to try to make as many good decisions in a single day without even thinking about it. So we need to try to form good habits that will reduce that mental load on our minds. So when we make good habits, we have these little good decisions that we're making every single day, it frees up that mental load in our mind to be able to make other decisions in life that may be more bigger decisions in life. So like, for example, we've talked about with groceries, how making a meal plan is a good idea because it can help you save money on your groceries. But here's another thing about a meal plan. If you have a meal plan set up already for the month, then you're taking away that decision that has to be made every single day about what you're going to have for dinner, or what you're going to have for lunch, or whatever meal planning that you're doing. You're taking that decision away from you. You've already pre-planned it. It's pre-made. And now you can free up your thinking to do other things that day instead of spending 30 minutes to an hour groaning about what you're going to make for dinner or where you're going to go out to eat or whatever it is you're going to do. You remove all of that from your life, and the decision's already been made. You just go right into it, and you can do other things with your mental capacity instead. So habit forming allows us to make bigger decisions focus on the big stuff without having to constantly worry about the little stuff. So here are some good habits that you can make in 2026 that will help you financially and allow you to take your mental thinking and focus on bigger things in your life. So the first one is budgeting monthly. If you budget monthly, you are making decisions ahead of time about what you're going to spend your money on, right? A budget is a plan. And when you make a plan, you are making decisions now, so you don't have to worry about making those decisions later. How much money you're going to spend on X, Y, and Z. And getting into this habit of making a budget every single month, maybe make it the Friday before the new month or whatever day you want to pick. Pick a day that's the week before the new month and make that your monthly budget day. And you just do it every single month and build that habit over time. It's going to be a benefit to you because then you don't need to worry about those little things, asking yourself, do I have money for this? Can I afford this? Is this something that I can actually buy right now? You don't have to think about that because you've already created the budget. You've already created the plan. You can answer the yes, that question with a yes or a no, depending on the plan that you made beforehand. And now you don't have to think about those little expenses. You can take your brain power and focus on bigger things, whatever that may be. Getting out of debt, building up your wealth, buying that new car that you want, whatever it is, going on that vacation. You can focus on bigger things because you've dealt with the little things in your budget. The next habit that you can form for this year would be to track your budget. We've talked about this before. Once a week, pick a day and put in all the transactions that you made for that week into your budget to see where you're at. Because a plan is not useful if you're not actually following through with the plan, which means you have to check in every so often and see how you're doing with that plan. I saw a study recently saying that 55% of people don't even know how much money they have in their bank account. That's scary. Because you should know that number. You should be aware of how much money you're spending and how much money you're bringing in. You should be aware in tracking that stuff because that helps you make adjustments in the middle of the month and stay on track with your budget, right? But if you're not doing that, then you can't really follow through with your plan. So that would be the next good habit to build into your systems for 2026. And that is tracking your budget at least once a week. Check in, see how you're doing. Are you on track? Are you getting a little off track in certain areas? What adjustments need to be made? The last habit to build for 2026 is to find ways to live on less than you make. So finding margin in your budget, cutting back in areas that maybe you have wasteful spending for this year. So maybe you have a subscription on something that you barely use and it's time to cut that subscription out of your life. Go ahead and do that. You'll save yourself some money. Maybe it's time to make that phone call and renegotiate your phone bill or your internet bill or whatever other bill that you have that you've been paying exorbitant funds on for 3 years or 4 years or 5 years now. Maybe it's time to cut back on going to Starbucks every single workday and instead having the coffee pot at home, create some coffee at home, take it with you to work and save money there. Or maybe there are many other little things in your life where you're spending money where a slight adjustment could be made to save you a good chunk of money every single month that could then be used to accomplish bigger things in your life. So that would be my last habit forming thing for 2026 is to look for ways to live on less than you make, cutting back in certain areas so that you can create margin to get those bigger goals that you may have for 2026 completed this year. So that's all I have for you today. If you have any thoughts about any of the segments that we have talked about today, go ahead and let me know in the comments down below. Go ahead and like the video on your way out. And if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do that as well. And as always, thank you for watching this video.